my name's James Wilkinson, co-founder of the EdTech Alliance. Today, we're going to be looking at how to design and deliver successfully an educational technology implementation project using the approach that we use on every one of our projects. We'll be using an example from one of our members, and so you'll be seeing live documents and deliverables and project management tools. This is going to be a long video, so I don't suggest you watch it all in one go, but use it like a manual, and we've got the chapter pointers in the description below. Enjoy. Before we start, I'd like to give a vote of thanks to YK Power School in Shanghai for allowing us to use live material from a recent educational technology project that we conducted together, which will bring this potentially slightly dry topic to life. As an EdTech Alliance member, YK Power School requested our assistance to structure, design and guide the implementation of a Apple infrastructure for their primary school, known as a Primary School Apple Project, or PSAP. So the goal was to implement the ecosystem consisting of devices, so many iPads, nearly 1,000, and also MacBooks for the older students and teachers, to implement Apple Classroom, which I think was the first implementation in China, and also shared iPad, and to integrate with their current school infrastructure, specifically the Power School Student Information System. Everything was required, from developing the vision and business case initially to designing and implementing the project, and in a very tight timescale of 14 weeks to have everyone trained, all the infrastructure and systems in place, all the data in place, and everything ready to go after the school holidays. So the core team, which we'll come on to later on, was 5 strong, with 3 YK POW staff on a part-time basis, and 2 of us from the EdTech Alliance guiding. So with the PSAP project as a context, we're going to look at all aspects of delivering a successful educational technology project in a school. So the organization, the approach, how to create the timeline and plan the project in detail, project management techniques, and also the infrastructure you're going to require. The great thing about this approach is it's totally scalable. It's been used on projects small, big, and absolutely gigantic, and it delivers every time. We've refined it over the last 30 years, so it fits together completely seamlessly. There's a reason that everything is there, even down to the last detail. It might not be immediately apparent, but hopefully it'll become so during this presentation or when you actually try the technique. We use this technique on all of our projects. It's completely standard, both for clients and also internally within the EdTech Alliance. So try it for yourselves and do let us know how you get on. In addition, when we've used this project approach with our members or new members, the initial reactions have been, "Oh, it seems a little bit detailed, it's a bit over the top," but this tends to change after a couple of weeks, and normally is completely evaporated when the project delivers on time, on budget, and with the minimum of fuss. So I think it goes without saying that the more you de-risk a project, the better chance there is that you're going to have a successful outcome. It also is standard that having a approach, a proper organization for the project, and documentation are just the basics to reduce risk. But also there's our 3 C's, and just to touch on these for a moment, let's talk about content at the top. So there are no prizes for pretty PowerPoint presentations. The focus of the project should be on delivering concise content, both to your team members and also to the stakeholders and the sponsor. So content's king here. Secondly, communication here. you need to have a transparent project. You need to be open in communications both within the core team and also to the project sponsor and to the stakeholders. And the reason for that is basically feedback. The more you communicate, the more people communicate back to you, and the more you can correct errors within the project design, and therefore the more chance you've got of getting a good implementation and operation. Third here is collaboration. Especially the core team should be collaborating constantly. And we use Microsoft Teams as a standard for having a collaborative platform. There are others, but whichever you choose, make sure that everyone's on it, knows how to use it, and is placing all of their documentation there. Because if the documentation's there, other people can read it, and again, it provides a feedback mechanism. Consistency is the last and possibly the most important. We use standard templates for absolutely everything. So they're available on our website. The whole point of having these templates is that people don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. There are standard templates for agendas. Meeting notes are always written in a standard format, as are the actions lists, as are the design documents. And it goes right back and loops back up here to content. If you've got to reinvent the wheel, then you're not focusing on content. It's taking you too long. Plus the fact that your readers have to work harder to extract the information. Having a standard format means that people know exactly what to expect and can just jump in and take out the content they need. Also, different documents and different approaches link well together. If you don't have that consistency, then you don't have the linkages between them. This consistency is both for documents and also for the structuring of meetings. Meetings happen same time every week, or the core team meeting does, to provide a momentum and a pace to the project. And in addition to that, there are always the same format of pack to support the meeting and the same format of meeting note and actions as outcome. So again, no surprises, and everyone can just focus on the content and getting the job done. So let's talk about the first step, defining the project. So if you've watched any of the other videos in this series, you'll be aware of our fundamental think, build, operate model. So think is the design of the project, build is putting it in place in your organization, and operate is running it on a day-to-day basis. And the reason we always stress these three phases so much is that any mistakes that you can iron out in think cost you a lot less than if you don't find them to build. So you've bought the wrong equipment, or you've done work that you need to redo. And of course, if you let those mistakes go through to day-to-day operation of the school, that can irreparably damage the business and also remove confidence from the IT operation. So basically, the mantra is always spend as much time as possible in think and be absolutely certain that you've got everything lined up before you move to build. So there should be a checkpoint here where the design of the project is taken to the project sponsor or project sponsors for approval before moving on to the build phase. So there's a checkpoint, and we'll come on to exactly how that works over the next slides. So if you've watched our project management basics video, you'll be familiar with the box model, which is our fundamental foundation to our approach. If you haven't, I encourage you to go and have a look on our YouTube channel. But in summary, to deliver any educational technology project in your school, you're going to need to harmonize 6 strands of work: strategy, people, processes, technology, data, and project management. So these strands here need to be designed in parallel during the project and implemented to make sure that when you move to the operate phase, everything is working correctly. In each strand, you're going to need to address a number of elements of work. So, for instance, let's take technology. You're going to need to have a solutions architecture. You need to have an architecture for the package you're putting in. You need to install and configure it, and you're going to need to be able to test it. So think of these work packages defining what work needs to be performed, what the outputs are, and also who's going to do it. So the strands are always the same in our approach. There's always these 6. The work packages, we vary slightly depending on which type of project we're implementing. But broadly, there's always 4 per strand. And in these 20 work packages here, you're capturing the whole of the work that needs to be done in the think and build phases of the project. So that's the idea, is to break what can seem to be an overwhelmingly large and complex thing into bite-sized chunks, but to make sure that these bite-sized chunks, either work packages, are completely aligned. For some projects, you are going to say that you don't need to do work in one or more of these work packages. That's fine, but make absolutely sure that it's a conscious decision to exclude it rather than just forgetting about it, because we've seen many projects where elements haven't been done, they've just been forgotten about or skipped over, and it's come to really adversely affect the operation of the final result. So we like this, and it appears that the EdTech Alliance members like it. The reason is basically because it's simple. It's obvious not only to the team, but also to the stakeholders and the sponsor community. It's on one page of A4, and even though it looks deceptively simple, it really does make you think about the work that needs to be done. So the top row of work packages and the first column of work packages in the box model are broadly the think phase. What we call the inverted L. The blue ones here are all mostly involved in build. So in this think phase, you get a chance to take the project objectives and define for the capability that you're trying to implement, what's it trying to achieve? When it's fully operational, and how is it going to operate in your school on a daily basis and bring the value that you need. So that's really the vision. For the business case, we're talking here about the total cost of ownership. What's it going to cost to design, to build, to implement, and to operate this project? So this needs to be defined on a pretty detailed basis, and also the benefits it's going to bring also need to be documented. In the deployment strategy, over what time scale is the project going to be rolled out? Is it going to be a big bang, i.e. a one-off, or a sequence of releases? And how is that going to gel into or align with the operation of the school? Remember that all schools, like organisations, can only swallow so much change at once. So dropping in a massive release that isn't going to be successful or adopted properly really won't be to your advantage. So here you can also, in the deployment strategy, consider pilots, proofs of concept, and limited functional drops. So it's really about the timeline of the rollout. And we call these functional drops releases, which we've mentioned, I think, in other videos. So performance measurement. So if the business case has promised advantages, then it would be good to have some tools in place or some processes in place to be able to measure those advantages over time and make sure the project is actually delivering what it says it was going to deliver. So let's move on to people here. So functional requirements. We put functional requirements into the people strand because it is people, the user community, that's going to be using the results of this project to deliver the capability that's been defined. So who are these user groups? What should they be able to do with the technology? And these functions will form the core of your release definitions. So basically you could say with release 1, we'll be able to do X. With release 2, we'll be able to do Y. And not only we, but which user group will be able to do what. And here you're also thinking about volumetrics. So in the case of PSAP at YKPAL, it was how many devices are going to be running at the same time, and what implications does that have for the existing networking architecture of the school. So as we said before, all these strands are interlinked, and everyone in the core team needs to be able to consider all aspects of the functional requirements. So in process definition, well, it's arguable that process strand is the most important strand of the box model. You can almost think of it as the meat in the sandwich that connects all the other strands together. The reason for that is very simple. You can't train people unless you've got processes defining what they need to be trained on. You can't test anything unless you've got processes defining what it is that the capability is meant to do, and therefore what you're testing against. So in this work package, you need to define at a high level the processes that each user group will be performing when the technology or the capability is implemented. So here it's good to think in terms of scenarios or use cases. So like a teacher using Apple Classroom with a group of year 2s who are sharing their iPad. These use cases force you to think about all the processes that need to be adopted. Here in Solutions Architecture, this covers all technical aspects of the project, devices, the infrastructure, software, APIs, integration points, what's in place, is it fit for purpose for the implementation of this capability, what's it going to cost, and how much time and effort is it going to take to implement the technology. And the technical architecture is going to be influenced to a large degree by the functional requirements, and the costings of the technical architecture obviously need to be fed back up into the business case. Again, interlinks. Source data quality assessment within the data strand. We're often asked why source data quality assessment is the first work package and sits in design. And the reason basically is that data is normally the fuel of any implementation of an educational technology capability. Virtual educational technology projects will require some kind of data feed from an existing source, and if the data is not correctly structured or it's of poor quality, then this can derail the project's timescales or cause the project to be cancelled altogether. So this really needs to be known right up front. So it's better to understand and map all the data required to make the project work, make sure it's there, and if it's not there, what's the effort in terms of cost and timescale it's going to take to get it into the right shape. So again, think of data as the fuel to the project. And then here in project design, so the first step here is going to be to pull together all the information for the other work packages in the inverted L, and make sure it aligns, and then summarize it in a form that can be presented to the project sponsor for approval. So effectively, as we said before, the milestone here for the project post-think should be a summary pack of all of these work packages, which basically defines the project in detail, and then the sponsor needs to say yep, it's a go, or no, it's not a go. So saving a lot of time, effort and heartache from moving into build when things really aren't going to work out. Once the project's formally approved, then you can start developing your project initiation document or phase initiation document, depending on whether you're defining a big bang project, so it's all going to be done in one go, or you're defining a first phase, a first release, if you like. We'll come on to that and how it works in the next slide. So this is the actual PID from the YKPAL School PSAP project. You notice it's release 1, which was the foundation release, designed to have a risk-free build in the 10 weeks that was available. So it's one of a number of releases. And you can see it was from the middle of last year. The template for the PID, or all PIDs, is available again on our website. So the PID's normally developed as a team exercise. So the strand lead for each one of the strategy, people, process, technology, data, project management, is responsible for their work packages, but it's the responsibility of the whole team to normalize it, to make sure it's a cohesive whole, and the capability is going to deliver a smooth operational value proposition. And it's the project manager's responsibility to coordinate this activity. And also they're the ones that are going to have to deliver it. So the key is that all strand leads should be aware of the work and deliverables in the other strands and be comfortable that these align with the contents of their own work packages. That's what we call normalization. So if we move down a bit, the second aspect, apart from the title page, is change control. So you'll see here that various draft versions were created until the final version was released on 24th of June. So broadly, pulling together the PID took just under a month. But it's absolutely critical to have version control so that everyone's reading the same document and that a final version can be delivered to the project sponsor and stakeholder, not necessarily for approval, but definitely for review. But this is the key definition document that the whole team will work to deliver the project. So in our template, you have the index page, which can be simply updated by using the update field and update entire table. So that's built into the template. And also down below, you have the first chapter is the introduction. So the PID should be considered at the project or phase definition. It should be self-standing. It should be available to everyone. So it comes back to the communication aspect of the project. And normally the starts with a whole project overview, and then talking about the releases and talking about the approach that's going to be used. And in here, you have a definition for every single work package. Now, having looked at the previous slide, we've talked about doing the inverted L to be able to create the design. But there's probably going to be a little bit more work that needs to be done in detail in some of these work packages, like the process definition, solutions architecture, functional requirements. And so the PID is designed to capture everything that needs to be done to make the project a success. And also, by doing that, we create, for each work package in the box model, a table that defines exactly these elements. So what's the work package meant to be achieving, so the objectives? What are the outputs going to be from that work package? What are the main tasks going to be? And it's important to have these because this will feed into the project planning. What are the deliverables going to be from the work package? What resources are going to be required to achieve the build of the work package or the work required in the work package? What's the input that's going to be required? So effectively the inflow. We usually put the current state. So effectively the PID defines as well as what needs to be done, what's already there. Any current issues that are known about at the time of the PID writing, and also any assumptions that are being made. So again, it's a way of pulling the whole of the project together in one document. We also here define the user groups just to make sure that those are clear to everyone being involved, who the project sponsor is, who the leads of the strands are. And you notice, okay, we've redacted the email address here, but we always use initials. Rather than writing out full names. Two reasons for this. It's laborious to write out full names all the time. And secondly, this fits much better into a number of the other documents coming up. So you'll see how that's used. But anyway, so standard is to use initials. So running through it very quickly, you'll see that there's a little bit in the vision, because most of that's been done at this point, a little bit in the business case, a little bit in the deployment strategy, a little bit in performance measurement. When we get into the people strand, functional requirements, there's more work to be done, so that's defined here. Organizational design, part of the build phase, and you see that these become a lot richer as we move into the build phase work packages. And I'm not going to go into it all. You can slow down the video, pause the video if you want to have a look, but broadly all that's in here. Again, process definition, high level, but then when we go into defining service levels and policies, becomes much more detailed. Measurement improvement as well. Technology, again, because the solutions architecture was defined at a high level within the design work, it needs to be defined at a much more detailed level now, and so all that is specified. Package architecture, by package we mean the software packages, install and configure, and also testing. Looking at a standard 3 types of testing. There's the unit testing. There's also the integration testing. So unit testing is just making sure the individual components work on their own. Integration testing is making sure that the components integrate with each other, but also with the other systems of the school. And then stress testing is putting it under load to see when it's going to break. So for instance, if you've got lots and lots of iPads and MacBooks trying to run 4K video all at the same time, that's probably going to put pressure on your network and internet connections. So all of that needs to be tested. Data, again, quite high level in the source data quality assessment, but much more in the data integration. Static data setup, about preloading all the static data into the technical components, and then any legacy data. In this case, there wasn't any legacy data to be imported, but in a lot of projects, data needs to be shifted from an old system to the current system, so it needs a kind of extract, transform, and load, as well as review to make sure everything's okay. And then the project management. One thing you'll see here is that we use Merlin as a project management tool, but I'll come on to that in a little while, and you'll see some examples of that. Business mobilization is making sure that the business is ready to receive the capability once it's delivered, and stakeholder management is really fairly obvious. So that's a very rapid rip through the PID, but to us it's absolutely essential to have this definition in one document prior to commencing with the build of the project. So that's the project defined. Let's look at now how we organize a project to get both the definition and the build conducted successfully. So this sequence of slides is taken from the PSAP kickoff session, which was in week 21 of 2020. I'll come on to the week numbers later on. And this first one is on the governance of the project. So all of our projects have basically this structure. There is a steering committee which is responsible for guiding the project, normally chaired by the project sponsor, and containing the project manager and any other stakeholders that the project sponsor wants to see. And so that's basically for guiding the project, normally meets monthly. The core team meets weekly, and their role is execution of the project. The core team has the members who are responsible for each one of the strands, and may also have, on larger projects, design authorities who are the designers of the strands. But this is why the approach is scalable. In a small project, one person can own one or more strands. On a large project, you always have a strand lead, but you may have design authorities and other resources working on that strand. But the idea of the core team is to get all elements, all strands of the project together on a weekly basis. And weekly is important. We talked about consistency previously, for pace and for alignment. If these projects are short delivery timescales, 1 week can make a lot of difference in terms of correcting errors or not. And then there are going to be resources. So in this case, there were resources from the school, there were third-party resources from suppliers, and there are going to be other resources on the project. But broadly, the structure is as simple as that. And on this side, you can see the way the project was broken down. So as we said, there was a project sponsor who was actually head of primary. The strand leads were all resources, people from YK Power School. And as you can see, in several of the strands, because this was a fairly small project over a 10-week build, the individuals had responsibilities for one or more strands. And these were the members of EdTech Alliance who were doing the shadowing and guiding. So, again, a slide from the PSAP kickoff workshop, and this is just a standard slide for us. Project philosophy, infrastructure, and housekeeping. So, on the philosophy, no surprises on these projects. If anyone's got an issue or anyone's got a problem, they need to raise it as soon as possible. With the speed and the complexity of these projects, everything needs to be fed to the project manager and resolved quickly and efficiently. Second thing is content over style. There are no surprises for pretty PowerPoints and pixel polishing, as we said previously. We recommend photos of whiteboards being taken, which we do an awful lot, or photos of bits of paper or napkins. But the key thing is to capture it and to share it as quickly as possible. The third thing is documentation of absolutely everything. Can't stress enough how often you need to refer back to a meeting note, and also with the speed, the fact that everyone is rapidly up to date with the latest developments in the project is super important. So for that reason, we have standard templates which are available on our website for agendas, meeting notes, reports, PowerPoints, etc., etc., and they are used right across the project team. The reason is that it's you don't need to think about what format you're going to use, template you're going to use. You just pick one and use it. Everyone knows the template, so it's a lot easier to enter information and to extract information. And also because they're integrated into our approach, elements of the meeting note, for instance, can be quickly yanked out and put into the rolling actions list. And I'll come on to that later on. In terms of infrastructure, we create a team within our Microsoft Teams platform, and if you use Teams, that's great. If not, then something else, but we strongly recommend you use a collaboration platform, and you create the channels as the strands, and so each of those channels is owned by the strand lead, but everyone in the core team has a ability to access and look at documents and obtain, and so they also store all deliverables, working documents, and meeting notes. We also record all calls. Now these can be on Zoom or on Teams, but especially for things like the weekly core team meetings or stakeholder interviews or anything else, it's great to have that, A, for creating the meeting note afterwards, and B, for referral if you need to. So Housekeeping, you've seen these strange week numbers, week 21, or another way of writing it is week 2021. This is the standard week of the year. It's available built into all calendars, so Microsoft Outlook, Apple iCal, and the idea is here that writing dates is laborious, and also people have difficulty in judging the amount of time between two dates. And also for the actions and deliverables in a project, to say you're going to do it by a date is normally erroneous, but to be able to divide the project up into a number of weeks and say, okay, this action needs to be done by this week, starts getting people more focused and more aligned. And additionally, it's a lot easier to sort if you have the number in this format. So this is standard for us, and you see this being used in the rest of the presentation. The other thing I said is we always use initials. And the reason for that is simply this. It's a lot less laborious to write, and it's a lot more of a standard format, and also it fits a lot better into the other documentation, which you'll see later on. So let's move on to the day-to-day running of the project. As we said before, one of the keys is consistency, and so for the core team, each week is pretty much the same. We have a core team meeting on this project specifically, a core team meeting on Tuesday mornings, but it's essential that the core team meets at the same time every week, and the going in position is a weekly progress report that's produced on Friday by the project manager, specifying the progress and the issues and anything else, and an updated project plan if there is one. Then that's considered. The core team gets together, so all Strand representatives get together on Tuesday in order to be able to discuss issues, to normalise the design of the project. And out of that comes a core team meeting note, which is basically structured in terms of actions arising, and then specifics from all the different strands. And in addition, the individual strands meet at least once a week on normal projects in order to discuss the specific aspects of their areas. And again, there's a strand meeting note, strands actions list coming out of that. And this goes on week after week after week after week to provide a pace and rhythm to the project. It's too easy if you don't do this for the strands to start separating, and then that's where the issues start coming in. Just a note, it's also worthwhile at the start of the project to get a very clear handle on what are key dates, and also who's going to be on holiday. So for instance, from an individual area in terms of project resources, but also from a school area in terms of when the teacher's going to be around and when the pupil's going to be around, which is obviously going to significantly affect things like training and also getting input for functional requirements. Just as a side note on team dynamics, from virtually every project we've ever seen, projects normally net out in these three phases: storming, norming, and performing, it's called. So don't be surprised if in the first 2 to 3 weeks of the project, when the team hasn't worked together before, people are questioning the approach, they're questioning each other, and they're questioning pretty much every aspect of the project. The key here is the approach works. It's been shown to work over and over and over again, and it's good to have a fixed element of the project. So, yep, there will be questioning, but have faith. The norming is when people start coming together and start to realise that actually the project's coming together. They start to communicate, they start to collaborate, and that's normally happens in over the weeks 3 to 5. And then after that, you get the phase you want to be at, which is the performing phase, where everyone knows what they're meant to be doing. They know what everyone else is meant to be doing. They know how the project works, and they can see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and they're going to get the result that they want. So these 3 phases, completely common, completely normal in all project team dynamics. Right, so that last section was on how we organise a project. Let's have a quick look here at how we plan one. So back to the week 21 kickoff session. It is vital at the outset of the project to have a top-level idea as to timeframes. And the reason is to make sure that everyone's on the same page as regards expectations. So normally, our first week is think of generating the very high level value proposition, just to see that everything still makes sense. If it does, then our next 2 to 3 weeks, or however long, depending on how complex the project is to create the inverted L, so the vision and business case, which allows us to go to the project sponsor for approval to proceed. So there we're looking at the vision, how things are going to fit into the school, a roadmap of how the project's going to be implemented, what releases, etc., what the overall requirements are, solutions architecture, and costs around it. And then once we have obtained project approval, then we're looking at creating the project PID and also the project plan. And then the remainder of the weeks, we're looking at the build phase, which is, as you remember, these work packages here. So it's delivering everything that's defined in the PID, and also it's going into how and when the release is actually going to be dropped into operation in the school. So PSAP, as you can see, was 14 weeks, and you can see that the majority of time elapsed was spent within the build, but a massive amount of effort was spent within the think phases to make sure that it was completely feasible. So there's absolutely no point in putting together a detailed plan of the project until the PID is complete and approved, and you've got a good idea as to what the tasks are. The PID is great for providing what needs to be done, but can't really timescale how it's going to be or how the tasks are going to be interconnected. So at EduTech Alliance, we standardized on a project management tool called Merlin from a German company called Project Wizards. In the links in the description below. So for us, it's powerful, it's easy to use, but of course many other project management tools are available. We do recommend that you adopt some form of tool because it's an excellent way of not only getting an overview as to all the elements of the project and how they all interlink, but also capturing things like issues, capturing checklists, and capturing risks. So you see here that we define our project according to 2 sections. Firstly is the assets, all the hardware and kit that needs to be delivered. And we normally put that up top because that's where the lead times lie, and the lags between ordering, so specify, order, and deliver, can normally be quite long. Now those lags can have detailed implications on the rest of the project, training, the rollout, the go-lives, etc. So that needs to be very clear and normally in the front section. And then, funnily enough, we have our work packages. So divided by strand and divided by the individual work packages within the strand. The tool also allows us to define resources, so who's going to be working on it. It also allows us to define the completions, so we can say that, for instance, this task here is 30% complete. And one of the advantages of the tool is that it starts performing tracking calculations to basically say what does that mean in terms of are you on track or are you ahead. So I'll put that back to 100% at the moment. As I mentioned, we can go into any particular one of the tasks, and we can have a look at notes. So again, if I go into extra iPads here, this little icon tells me I've got notes, and then during the core team meetings or even ad hoc, the project manager will get updates, and then those updates can be entered into the notes fields, allowing all the information relating to that task to be captured. Again, we tend to put the latest note at the top because then this allows everyone ease of access. The other thing that's probably important to say is that we have a bottom bar here that allows us to capture things like checklists. So checklists can be assigned to any task. So if we go down to here where we've got a checklist, and that checklist is for new hires. We can have a look and see what it says here, and it's hiring IT support, and if we have any notes, then the notes would be in here. We can also look at reports in a different way. So if I go into, I'm in work breakdown at the moment, I'm in the format which is progress, but there are many others. I can have a look at all of my checklists, for instance, and see what they are. And checklists just allow us to tick off a whole bunch of things related to a task that aren't time phased. I can look at the issues that I've got on the project. And again, we can also not only monitor how these issues are progressing, but what their status is. And I can also look at the risks on the project and then see whether these risks have been mitigated or not. So again, it is just a very, very straightforward way of having all the information about the project, especially in the build phase, in one place, and to be able to dynamically see the interdependencies working in action. There are other options such as packages like Trello that run on Kanban charts. We find that these are great for simpler projects when it's just a matter of saying what needs to be done, what's its status, and whether it's done. But for the more complex projects where you have time dependencies and relationships between tasks, we highly recommend using a package like this. So that demo was taken from the week 34 core team when, as you'd expect, the project was delivered, so all tasks were complete. And one thing to note is that, again, consistency, the week numbers are reflected across the top here. So again, super easy to understand where you are and how long you've got to go. And normally, if you're working during the project, you'll have a red line running down here, which represents where you currently are. So you can see whether you're ahead or behind on progress. So to this point, we've covered the project organization and the project planning. So what does the day-to-day project management of one of these educational technology projects look like? So let's jump back a little to the beginning of the project and to look at the cycle of documents and the project manager's role in making sure that everything is pulled together and the project moves forward smoothly. So if you recall the timeline or the weekly activities, the progress report comes out on a Friday, so this was the first one from week 21. Content is slightly irrelevant, but the keys are it's by strand, as we've talked about, and we're talking about here progress, issues, and anything else. So it's an opportunity for the strand leads to pass to the project manager on a Friday, the things that are concerning them, things they've done during the week, and this sets the agenda for the weekly core team meeting, which in this case on PSAP was occurring on the Tuesday of the following week. So, these cross-team meetings, well, the objective is to make sure that all the strands are aligned on at least a weekly basis. So effectively, everything's harmonized. And also to resolve any issues, either cross-strand or within side strands. And it allows a chance to define effectively what the upcoming week's work is going to be, and to make sure that the actions that were recorded last week have been done if their deadline was by now. So effectively it's just getting everyone on the same page and making sure that everyone's completely showing the same vision of how this project's going to deliver. To keep pace, as we said, we tend to mark a jour fixe. So right at the beginning of the project is a date and time, or day and time of the week where this is going to occur, when all the core team leads, members, the strand leads, can commit to being there. And we normally recommend it's probably about 1.5 to 2 hours at the outset because of the storming, but this can reduce to about an hour as you move through the project normally, but it's going to be a kind of suck and see basis. So who needs to be there? All of the core team. What's the standard agenda? Basically, quickly review the progress report, which is normally done by the project manager, and make sure that each of the strand leads gets to explain if everything's not clear in their particular bit. We have a core team pack that we go through, so it's the responsibilities of the project manager to create this pack prior, and this pack effectively guides the core team meeting, and we'll show you an example of that in a minute. The next thing is to review the project plan and go through strand by strand, updating progress, and also updating any risks, issues, or anything else that needs to be put in place there. And then the last thing is to review the rolling actions list, and again I'll show you the format of that in a couple of slides time, in order to see what the progress is, see what's been completed, and see if there are any delays, what those delays are. And the core team pack tends to have some standard elements, but also if there are special topics that need to be discussed, then strand leads can present those prior to the meeting to the project manager to make sure that they're included in the pack. So let's take the core team meeting from week 23 as an example, moving towards the end of the design phase. And this is the core team pack. So standard agenda, review the progress report, any special topics need to be included, review the rolling actions list, and then next steps, any other business. We always include a reminder of the overall timeline in order that everyone can make sure that they're still on track, and also any changes that can be discussed. Also, a standard box model is displayed with status, and yellow triangles indicate any areas that we need to have specific discussions on. We use an approach called CHO, which is confirmed, hypothesis, and outstanding, to define the design for each work package. So basically, the idea is to move everything over to the left-hand side, obviously. Given that the high-level design is put in place in the think phase, there may be some elements that are outstanding for move to the build, but we need to be completely clear what those are and that they don't have any impact on the business case or the timeline for the project. Where we have specifics, there are specific slides to discuss them. So you can see CHO here for the business case, work package and strategy strand, the roadmap and performance measurement, and then moving into people strand, the requirements side and specific slides, process definition side, technology, solutions architecture, and again, if there is no CHO for a work package, then there's no inclusion here. Specific slides again on the technology, moving into data, project management, and finally the initial draft of the project plan, so that everyone gets to know what it's going to look like, the general format, and to start providing feedback. Following the core team meeting, it's the responsibility of the project manager as owner of the project plan to update it in terms of progress by task, in terms of any changes to task durations or task dependencies, and also to update the risks and the issues and the checklists, and then to print the plan. Most project management packages allow the printing of the plans to be done like this, and this normally what we do is print PDFs and then upload the PDFs onto Teams so that everyone has access. So post the weekly core team meeting, the project manager's other responsibilities are twofold. Firstly, putting together the meeting note, and secondly, updating the actions list. So let's look at the meeting note first. Again, standard format, which is available on the EduTech Alliance website, and you can see the header information here, quick summary, actions which are absolutely key, so normally tagged by strand with a responsibility and a week that they're due by. Again, this is key, and you can see why we use the format when we go on the actions list. So we have a look at the project status and note any details there. Any special topics are noted here. And then in the design phase specifically, we go into reviewing the CHOs. So as we said, confirmed, hypothesis, outstanding. And we do it strand by strand, so you can see that the meeting note is broken down by strand, strategy, then within strand, vision and strategy, so the first work package effectively. And you can see here each element. This is what the element was, so confirmed, improve primary learnings in general as a objective. This is the discussion, and this is the decision. So you can see some are remove, some are keep, some are moves, etc., etc., etc. But every element has the discussion, the decision noted, and this provides an audit trail for exactly what went on during the meeting, the decisions made on the project. And key here is that you record the meeting, as we said. We use Teams because it's obviously quite complex. It's impossible to capture all the detail during the meeting, especially if the project manager wants to participate. So it's much better to record it and then write it up afterwards. So again, basically goes on like that. If there are any particular key elements of the pack, we put those in, just clip the screen capture and put those in as a picture. But basically, that's broadly how things work. One last thing, I suppose, is that the files are normally named in exactly the same format. So meeting note, project name, what the meeting was, and then the week number. And again, this is in the template actively linked to the file name, so just save it as that file name, click edit footer, or right click edit footer, and then you can just right click on here, and you can update the file name. So this is the other document that's the responsibility of the project manager to update following the core team meeting. which is the core team actions list. So it's a rolling actions list, a single document that's updated after, reviewed and updated after every core team, and it's what drives the project forward. So it makes sure that nothing gets forgotten or slips down the cracks. It makes sure that tasks that are done are marked as done, so in other words closed here, and also tagged with the week they are done. If there are tasks that are open and not completed, then they can be marked with the week and what the progress is. Now, it's always sorted by status, the status column. So there's only two status, open or closed. And we, as a habit, and I don't know why, we strike out done actions like this, just put a strike through, and then mark them as closed. And the word table sort takes care of the rest, which I'll show you in a little while. So, this is the first page. You can see open actions down here to about halfway down. Empirically, not sure why, a project is pretty healthy if it's got up to 2 pages of open actions at any one time. Normally 1.5 pages is good. If it stretches to over 2 pages, then it tends to indicate that the project is starting to lag behind. And this seems to hold true for small projects or enormous projects. So, what are the key elements? Firstly, ID. Every single task has to have an ID for reference. We learned a long time ago that trying to reference by the text leads to confusion, so there's an ID. There's obviously the task, and again, normally the header is the strand, and then there's a task identity. There is the responsibility. Again, initials we always use throughout the project, and here they come into their own because they're dead easy to fit into the column. The by week is when the task was agreed to be completed by, so the deadline, and the week here is the week the task was raised. And that's important because it links back to the meeting note from that week, so if anyone needs to get further information, they just go back to the 21 core team meeting note, and they can see what's going on. So this is the example of the actions list at the end of week 22, so we're going to update it with the actions from the week 23 core team meeting. We found that the best way to do this is as follows. First of all, go through the open actions and either identify any that need updates, so no servers in China on 2023 here, and put a tag in there, or any that are being closed, go ahead and close them by marking them done, putting a strike through, and marking closed. So do that when it's sorted in the default order of open followed by closed. And it's actually in detail, it's status, and within status by week, so you get to see the actions running from the ones that should have been completed all the way through to the ones that are due this week, and the ones that are going up into the future. So, first thing we do is take the table, select it, go to table, and then sort, and then we're going to sort by ID in ascending order. So this is just to make sure that we can have sequential task numbers. Click OK, and the table sorts. Now, one of the most useful shortcut keys we found on our keyboards is function command and then right arrow, because that moves you right down to the end of the project, the end of the table. And then you'll see that the IDs are sorted sequentially. We can go into our weekly core team meeting. We can select, so just go Command C, all the actions, so just highlight them and select them. Go back into the actions, and then just go to tab down to a new line, go Control V, and they automatically go in order in the right column. So again, this is the way that we've made our approach basically all tied together. First thing to do is to add in the new task numbers. So let's just do that. 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, maybe go to the next page, 7, 58, 59, and then we're done there. Then we want to go and we want to put in the current week. So luckily we've got a week 23 here. Control C, and then just scroll down and Control V to add it. And then these are all open actions. So again, Control C from a previous example, Control V, and it's all in. Then function command and left arrow takes you back to the top again. Select all, go back up to table, go to sort, and then we're going to sort by status, descending, by week, ascending, and then press OK. And there you have it. You've got all your actions in bi-week order for all the open ones. And you can see going down to all the new actions here. And then luckily we are just below 2 pages. So that means that the project should theoretically be still pretty much on track. Now, we've been using this technique for years. Obviously, there are other task management packages and applications that are available. We've looked at a lot of them, and what we have found is 2 things. First of all, this suits the methodology. It's very easy to use, and most people have Word and can do all the table sorting. Second thing is that team members like it in this format because they can basically sort by their own actions, print this off, pass it around to their strand team members, etc., etc. So we find it flexible, it works for us, but whichever approach that you use, please make sure that you find a way of permanently capturing all actions so that nothing escapes and everything can be constantly monitored. And now onto the infrastructure that we use to support our projects. And finally, I just want to show you the collaborative infrastructure that we use for all of our projects. We use Microsoft Teams, but there are other platforms available. We create the project as a team, and within the team we have a general channel, and then all the other channels are effectively the box model strands. All discussions and meetings occur in the posts of the particular channel that are relevant, and in the file section you can see that the work packages each have their own folder, and within those you'll find working documents, deliverables, everything else. The team is fully accessible to all core team members, so if anyone needs to have a look at something from another strand, that's completely available. And again, all meeting notes, actions lists, plans, etc. Are placed regularly within project management. Well, that's us come to the end, and congratulations if you've managed to get this far, especially if you've done it all in one sitting. I know it's a long video, but it helps to have all the components in one place so you can see how everything harmonizes and supports you in delivering a successful project. As usual, if you have any comments or questions, do feel free to get in touch with us.